Alderman Dwight has requested be recused from the discussion and voting for item 1, the dedication of the street in the Riverview community. Do we have a motion to Is there a second?
I told her I'm going down.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Our next item is E, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Item F, approval of the consent agenda. Just briefly want to mention that item 3 on the consent agenda acknowledges that the city has received the waterfront stabilization funds in the amount of $5 million as directed by the North Carolina General Assembly. This ordinance will create a separate capital improvement fund for the waterfront stabilization project. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items? Mr. Lombardi, and a second. Alderman Davis. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is special recognition. We do not have any individual proclamations this evening, so we will move directly to agenda item 1, consideration of the road dedication and acceptance of Flank Court in the Riverview community. Mr. Giuseppe will be presenting this request on behalf of the Riverview community and is prepared to answer the board's question. Mr. Giuseppe.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all the aldermen and Mayor Pro Tem. So, yeah, I'm the attorney for River Mist Property Association, and this subject came up as to the one small section of private roadway, the gravel water subdivision that's otherwise already been dedicated to the city for purposes of road maintenance. And the subject came up about what to do with this outlying segment. I think that it was intended, or it's pretty clear it was intended, that it would have been also dedicated to the city at the same time that the rest of the roads were. For some reason, it just wasn't. Centex was the original builder, and then Pulte took over, and there were a lot of issues in that process of development and their transition out and transition of their power to the board, and we had a lot of things we had to contend with, and I think that was one of the things that the developer neglected to do. So I have prepared a dedication, which includes an exhibit. I don't know if we have the pictures up that would help illustrate things that people might be interested. But I'll just keep talking about it. So the deed of dedication actually has its own exhibit, and the exhibit is a map plastic that illustrates the area. And it's a small roadway section which goes around the clubhouse, basically, of River Mist. It's identified as a 60-foot private right-of-way. And I structured the deed, and I had been talking with Tom Boyd about this when he was still in that capacity. I structured it so that it would be clear, and it is stated here clearly, that accepted from the conveyance of the streets to the city for maintenance purposes. Okay. I'll just talk louder.
Just take the microphone.
So this is the roadway section. You're coming off Jason Boulevard. Can everybody hear me?
No, you have to hold the microphone.
Am I able to pick this up?
You can.
There's a laser pointer on the bottom of the pointer that you can use.
I think he was talking about the audio part of it. Yes. Well, I'll just stand right here and point to it. So basically, you see J. Swain Boulevard, and it goes into what is Flank Court. Flank Court goes right in that. And roadway that the POA is looking to have the city take over like the rest of the roadways. Those are taxpayers like all the rest of the homeowners in there, and everyone else has the benefit of the city's maintenance of those roadways that are in front of their properties. The deed, as I was saying earlier, makes clear that the parking lot spaces, though, which are along that section of road and down at the end where there's a circle, are not a responsibility of the city. So that would remain an obligation of the POA to maintain over time. The language is clear that that part of it would be accepted and remains a POA responsibility, so that the conveyance is limited to maintenance of the roadway itself. The deed also includes an affidavit from Alderman Lombardi, who, in the capacity of being the president of the board there, which affirms that the POA has voted on and approved with the requisite membership approval level in order to allow this to occur, because it's technically common property, and the statutes say that you have to have membership approval for a conveyance. That's been done, voted on, approved. So that's where we are with it. I don't know if the board has any questions. I've got first additional photographs that I have just done and put into the program if people want to see the photos of the area as well. Any questions that I can answer?
So are we just talking about the portion in front of the houses along the top? We're not talking about the portion of the cul-de-sac that extends down towards the floor there?
That's correct. So I'll just walk over and...
There's a laser pointer on the other side.
Oh, you were telling me that. Okay. So how does that work? Is it this side? Okay.
Go back to the other.
Okay, okay, this one? I'll just walk over quickly, and then I'll describe what I learned. Okay. It's this area, this one. I'm just pointing to the area that confirmed what you were referring to, in terms of the area that's, what do you do? And it's identified in the map plat as well. So the map plat identifies that section of roadway as 60-foot private right-of-way. And the exhibit, the deed, and the exhibit to the deed refer specifically to that segment. So there's cross-referencing there, and it's clear which section of the roadway we're talking about.
Great, thank you. Mr. City Attorney, have you reviewed this deed and are you okay with it?
Yes, I don't have any problems with it, assuming that the staff has confirmed that it complies. I noticed in the resolution accepting the dedication, it recites that the city staff inspected the streets and found that it met the standards. Assuming that's true, nothing wrong with the form of the...
I can say that maybe Mr. Alderman Lombardi can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Tom Lloyd went out there at one point and met with one of the board members, looked at the roadway, I think. Did that occur? Well, Tom Stanley, okay. So, and the roads there have all been maintained from the beginning at the same standards. Again, the rest of the roads are up to the standards because the city has been involved in their maintenance. These are some additional photos of the area. What I'm referring to in the highlighted section is the map plat itself. You see the yellow highlighting across that area, and then also delineate where the parking spaces are. Parking stalls, the parking spaces, and that those, and the deed specify that those parking areas are still an obligation.
Right, so to make it clear, the parking stays with the HOA, we're just taking the roadway for
That's correct.
Lori, did you have something?
Yes, ma'am. When this came to us, I did distribute it to among the department heads, and they all were fine with it. Tom Stanley, our public services director, recently made sure I was right out there to check it. It was all fine.
I have a question.
Yes.
Since the city hasn't been maintaining it, what condition is it in?
Well, I took a series of pictures myself, only one of which is in this presentation. But the late part of last year, I went out there and met with Alderman Lombardi, and we walked through the area. I'm certainly not a road engineer myself, but I'm familiar with the roads in the city, and the road way through there is, to me, it looks like it's in perfect condition, at least as far as compared to what we would see in the rest of the community. It's similar, I didn't see any damage, cracking, buckling.
There are quite a few patches. I did go this week.
Oh, yeah.
I took a look at the property and there are quite a few patches. So I was a little concerned because I don't understand the need for a 60-foot right-of-way, and that could be my ignorance. But the 60-foot right-of-way technically includes those parking spots, although you say it does not based on the language.
Yeah, that's right.
So is the 60-foot right-of-way required, or?
Well, just to back up a little bit for your comment about the condition, I haven't been out there in several months, so I don't know if something may have happened, but, yes.
Hey, Tom, before you say something, I don't mean any disrespect whatsoever, but we've done this before once for a long time here. Under our ethics thing, is he allowed to talk?
Yes. Yes. He can speak, he can't take part in your deliberations on it. You know what I mean?
So
Yeah,
that can fall under the 501c3 part then?
I'm sorry, what?
We passed a ethics ordinance because the state required us to do it against the money. And in it, it had two functions. One, if you were going to exclude yourself because you were part of the program, you couldn't vote and you couldn't speak. So I just don't want us to make a mistake.
I thought we were just asking for information from like an ordinary witness, you know, you would ask.
I'm good as long as we're good. Because I just don't want to.
Well, my comment about the condition is not, I am not an expert on any level, but it did appear that there were patches of some type made within the road. So that was my only comment. And then my concern about the 60-foot right-of-way versus, could that be slimmed down? Because it does include, or appear to include parking spaces, although the language in the deed does not.
Well, to answer your points there, which are good points, I think the condition issues, it might be, I don't know if those conditions you saw were on the section of the road that we're talking about or over on that other section, which is still maintained by the HOA, two different sides. It might have been, I think, Alderman Lombardi, in preparing this deed, I reviewed another deed of dedication that was prepared, I don't know, a couple years ago through the city. And it was a similar kind of situation where the city didn't want to take over the parking areas. And the language I have in here is substantially similar to that in terms of making that distinction.
Alderman Carroll, to answer your question, we can take in as much or as little, and you've got complete discretion on this. But to your point about the patching, obviously, and Alderman Hall's point, you know, one of the things about taking it in is that it's ours then. So you don't want to take on something that's going to be a burden. So that's the idea behind having staff go out and take a look and make sure that it's up to DOT standards and that it's not going to have sinkholes where the underground drainage is leaking.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. Tom Stanley, he rode through the entire subdivision, but he said that it was no worse than anywhere else in that subdivision, or no better, I guess, is the same, so it's congruent. But also, if the 60-foot right-of-way is present in River Nest already with the other sections, it makes sense that this would be 60 feet.
Yeah, I'm sure the 60 feet is a result of zoning and plat approval. So, I mean, we don't want to go mucking around with that. And I mean, remember that the rest of the the streets in any better or worse shape than the rest of them, as Tom knows.
And the parking stalls is just, I'm sorry to interrupt, somebody's saying something.
Well, I think my concern is not necessarily the condition, because I agree the condition is very comparable to everything else that exists there. It's that it's a very awkward situation with regards to where it starts and stops.
Well, it's an odd thing, and those homeowners, obviously, they had no control over the fact that they'd be situated just across from parking stalls, but they had to have some parking for the clubhouse. So these people, these 7 lot owners just happen to be in this unique situation, but they're otherwise undistinguishable from the rest of the neighborhood. So the idea, again, I think it's pretty clear from the way that things went down with the development and the transition with the builders, this would have and should have otherwise been dedicated. It was just missed among several other things that were missed in the transition process.
As a practical matter, from our standpoint, not having the parking stalls, I'm looking at this. You can see this page. It makes sense that they would carve out the parking stalls if they're used for this community building. And the other thing is, from our perspective, what use would the public get out of that? I can see why a community like that would like to hold on to their parking so that they can say, you can park here and you can't. If we took it in as dedicated, they would have no control over who parked there. If we didn't, it could be people from another neighborhood or New Jersey.
That's a good question, because by saying the city is doing the 60-foot right of way, if it's dedicated to the city, is it not public?
Essentially, it is. As to that.
So I think that accomplishes what you just said.
Saying with the carve out of with them carving out and keeping the parking spaces, they are allowed to continue to maintain those as private. Now, they have to maintain them, not the city. But by the same token, they get to decide if it's parking or not. Well, that's not being conveyed over to us. The parking spaces are not being conveyed. The way
So in certain areas, it's not 60 feet.
exactly.
60 is done this down. In certain areas where where the private property is, it is not a 60-foot.
Right. It is. That's the description that's used on the map. That's why he used the language in the deed. He said that part that's labeled as 60 foot, save and except these parking places. So he's carving out the parking places out of the area that's described as 60-foot easement on this map.
Exactly. It's stated that way just to be consistent with the deed paperwork, but literally it's not 60 feet because 60 feet is curb to curb. And it's just, we're talking about, that's the description. We say, basically what you do is you lay out, here's the description of the thing being conveyed, except this.
Except the carve out.
Except the carve out. And that's how we get to the point where it's 60 minus whatever the parking stalls are.
So it's really going to be 46 feet, give or take, right? 47, something
Right.
Curb to curb is only 22 or 20.
Well, I'm sorry, I apologize. I was talking about the length.
Yeah.
Yes, I apologize. Curb to curb is obviously not 60 feet. I'm sorry.
So do we know what is a right of way? It's not 60, what is it?
Well, the 60, right, for the length, the description, I think, is correct. I don't think that the length is impacted by the carve-out per se, except maybe to the extent that the 60 feet includes some of the circle at the end, which has some additional parking spaces. I haven't measured it myself. Again, we're trying to be consistent with the way it's described in the map plat so that everybody is consistent from one step to the next in terms of conveyance.
So the question, Norwood, is you're comfortable with the language because it does exclude the private property.
Yes, it keeps the parking place. There's not, the funny thing about it is we have to resurface this 15 years down the road. It is going to look funny because we're going to go in and resurface parts of the road, hopefully a long time from now. And the HOA is going to be responsible for those parking places. So, there'll be a stack of asphalt there, and then you'll have about 2 inches down where these parking places are. And I assume, you have to ask the public works folks, but I assume what you typically do in that situation is coordinate with the HOA and get them to go ahead and pay, because it's much cheaper to buy that kind of stuff in bulk.
I think that's right.
Do we have any other questions from the board? Okay, the next step would be, do we have a motion to approve the resolution accepting the dedication of Plank Court in River Mist at Dutchman Creek and approve the deed of dedication as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and Alderman Davis, second. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, and I think that the only other technical step of formality is that this has to be executed consistent with the approval or acceptance by the city, so we would have Alderman Lombardi execute it, notarize it, and then it would come to the mayor. And that would formalize it, and then this would be recorded in the land records, register of deeds. So I will coordinate with Alderman Lombardi to get the signatures, and we'll get it back to the board.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Agenda item number 2, abandonment of a portion of an alley to be presented by our city manager.
Yes, good evening, everyone. We've had a request by 2 residents to abandon a portion of an alley that runs parallel with North Caswell Avenue. They would like to make this into a green space area. I did check with our police and fire chiefs, the public services director, to see if they would have any issue with this. They do not. Just so you know, tonight, all you're doing is reviewing whether you even wish to pursue this. There are lots of other steps we have to go through by state statute, contact the butters to see if they are interested in, usually what you do with it, the land is you split it down the middle and see if somebody wants it on either side. But we don't want to even start that process unless it's something that, you wish to move forward with. And I believe Mr. Brown, there he is here to discuss the item and answer your questions. So, here.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Good evening, board, aldermen, and attendees.
Mr. Brown, I'm sorry, will you turn your microphone on, please?
Just keep it, the middle. Testing? Very good. My name is Gaines Brown. I live at 921 North Caswell Avenue. And the request is to abandon a portion of a 10-foot alley that is the rear of my lot and adjacent to or part of a lot owned by Tina Monk, who has some development plans to put 4 lots in there on a relatively large piece of property. So it's not trying to maximize the density of that area. My only concern is, or interest is, to maintain a little bit more of a green space buffer. It might sound like a personal issue with a personal agenda, but the fact is that the alley terminates, it's a dead-end alley. It doesn't go all the way through the block from 9th Street to 10th Street. And her property ends up having a wedge on the opposite side of the alley that is unbuildable. And I think there's probably a couple of surveys and a drawing that shows the alley in your package. And I know there's a process that has to be accommodated that would see if there's any opposition by other property owners that are adjacent to the alley. But my biggest concern really is just to be able to take pride in ownership of a portion of that so I can maintain it. The issue right now is there's, after the last couple of storms, there's some large trees that are hanging on other trees and nobody's
earlier this year on parcel number 10. As Southport Crossing is a multi-year, multi-phase project. It's subject to a previous version of the Unified Development Ordinance. And for the purposes of flat recordation, Southport Crossings may avail themselves of the performance guarantee process for required improvements, as opposed to just installing everything prior to recordation, as is how the ordinance reads today. It would apply to new development. Southport Crossings utilized this process in 2018 when the original group of out parcels was created. Construction of infrastructure is not yet complete. I'm not sure if any of you have been to the site, but it is actively under construction, and it's allowed to be under construction with preliminary plat approval and site plan approval for Tractor Supply. But in an effort to remain consistent with the 2018 final plat approval, staff proposes the first two conditions you'll see in your packet, which is that one, the Board of Aldermen shall approve the final plat with the condition that the plat shall not be recorded or signed by me until a performance guarantee with applicable financial instrument, that being a letter of credit, or performance bond, etc., is provided and accepted by city staff, and the Board of Aldermen shall approve the final plat with the condition that the plat shall not be recorded until Brunswick County has inspected and certified all water and wastewater infrastructure and has signed the plat indicating such has occurred, and I confirmed with Brunswick County Engineering that process was amenable to them. And then, as you'll see in the request and staff recommendation, there is an additional condition, and this is just in an attempt to be a catch-all, that the plat shall not be signed for recordation until all required certificates are in conformance with the applicable standards of the Unified Development Ordinance and have been signed by the appropriate parties. So, more than happy to answer any questions. The applicant, there's Mike Nichols of Paramount Engineering is here as well.
Any questions for Travis? Do we have a motion to conditionally approve the final plat application with the conditions noted in attachment 1? Would you read the whole thing just to make sure?
I'll make a motion to approve the final plat for Southport Crossings out parcels 10, 11, and 12 with the following conditions. 1, the plat shall not be signed for recordation until a performance guarantee and bond is received and accepted by the city of Southport staff for all roadways. 2, the plat shall not be signed for recordation until Brunswick County Utilities has inspected and certified the water and wastewater infrastructure and signed the plat. And 3, the plat shall not be signed for recordation until all required certificates are in conformance with the applicable standards of the uniform, I would mess that up, the Unified Development Ordinance, and have been signed by the appropriate parties.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Alderman Carroll. We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 4 is the appointment of the representative and alternate to the Cape Fear Council of Governments. Mayor Hayden has been serving as the city's COG representative. I've been serving as the alternate. Mayor Hayden asked to be reappointed to the city's Cape Fear Council of Governments as the primary representative, and that I also remain alternate.
I make a motion that we reappoint Mayor Hayden as our representative on Cape Fear COG with, sort of say vice mayor this time. Whatever you alternate mayor, pro tem mayor, whatever. Alderman Mosteller is the alternate.
We have a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is manager's report. I will now call on our very own city manager, Connie Thayer.
All right, just very quickly, we will be having a number of workshops in January that we really need to get together. So if you could let me know if there's any dates you are not going to be available, I would really appreciate that. I'm going to try to combine as much as I can, but there's really a lot of things that need to come in front of you all workshops, and we need to start getting these things moving. In front of you tonight is the updated projects list. We have worked very hard, Dory and some of the other staff, to get this all together. We now have had meetings on almost all the major projects. I think we're in really, really good shape with these, and we will start meeting every other week, and we will start getting a lot of these that are going to be updated so that we can finally keep track of all the projects. So I appreciate the staff and others' help on that. And just a reminder for vacancies, we have a city manager vacancy. January 1st is the deadline, a part-time engineer, January 15th. And we just hired another police officer. He accepted the position, so we only have 2 vacancies. So I wish everyone a wonderful holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you, Master. The next item, committee reports. Alderman Allen.
Thank you. First, let me thank the city manager for this spreadsheet of projects. That's very, very helpful, very useful. Thank you. As far as the planning board, we did hold interviews. We have a vacancy coming up. We held interviews yesterday. And we'll bring back a recommendation at January's meeting for filling that position. We've got 2 upcoming meetings. Next Wednesday, the 14th at 4 o'clock at the Nash Street substation will be a planning board committee meeting in reference to the project at 115 North Howell Street, which is the car insurance property. And then, of course, the planning board meeting itself will be next Thursday, the 15th at 6 o'clock right here. Thank you.
Alderman Carroll.
4th of July committee, Randy is killing it, absolutely, always, right? Like, so the volunteers are killing it. We are so fortunate to have such an amazing group of people. Glad to be a part of that. The Historic Preservation Commission met last evening. It was a great meeting. We were fortunate to establish chair and vice chair. Charles Drew is our chair, and Rick Camus, our vice chair. And made really good progress, I think, on establishing the rules of procedure, which are kind of our next step. That's it.
Alderman Long.
From another meeting, we had a conversation about the infamous 441 acres out that we were originally going to build a sewer plant on. And we now have 2 bidders that are on in some form of process. I'm not sure where we are with that. I just want to announce that Matsu, better known as Sunny Point, has informed me that the Department of Defense has decided not to enter into the bidding process for that piece of land now. So there's the 2 bidders that are there. They just wanted to remind everybody that they still retain all of the easement controls on it, which include 25 people or less on the property. That's it.
Thank you, Alderman Alton. Alderman Lopez.
Well, I expect everybody knows it's Christmas time and there are lots of Christmas trees. So in the newsletter, which is available on the website, and the website's getting better and better, so it's easy to find that newsletter. The Forestry Committee has 2 items. One of them is pets and Christmas trees. Now, I've had a cat. I know that cats live to destroy Christmas trees. So there are some tips there. And just general safety for your dogs, your cats, and your Christmas trees. But there's another thing in there too. You know that every year there is a huge Christmas tree at the National Capitol in Washington, D.C. The one this year is from North Carolina. It's a 78-foot red spruce from the Pisgah National Forest, and it is decorated with 7,500 ornaments made by school children throughout North Carolina. How about that? It's called the People's Tree. So I think this is the first time in many years that the tree has come from North Carolina. And we are the Christmas tree capital of the world, you know. Although I understand that we have an Alderman from California. Couldn't resist.
That is extremely inappropriate.
Next year, consider a North Carolina tree.
Oh, God.
And the forestry committee meets at 5 o'clock this coming Tuesday. Do you want me to take Parks and Rec? Parks and Rec has not met this week because they meet on the second Tuesday also at 6:30. Please come. Alderman Marty?
Yeah, beautification has no cleanup and no meetings because of the holidays and the work we've been doing on decorations. Our next challenge is taking them all down and putting them away and getting them ready for next year. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Next is the mayor's report. Mayor Hayden and the First Lady send their very best wishes to everyone for a Merry Christmas and a safe and happy New Year. We are so very blessed to live in Southport. I say this often, this is one of my favorite quotes, feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. So I'd like to take a moment to say thank you. As citizens of Southport, we are indebted to the talented individuals that work for the city. With humility, we recognize that we can never repay you for all you do and all the countless unseen things that you do for the good of the city and the citizens. Whether it's public services that keeps our city running, or our police and fire departments that keep us safe, or our community relations and parks and recreation departments that help maintain the culture of who we are. Our city is blessed with committed individuals that work here. Also, when I look around the room, I see neighbors that share their time and talents day to day for the benefit of the city they live. And the spirit of volunteerism within our community, it always appears boundless. Whether it's the beautification committee, with planting the bulbs or helping spread Christmas cheer, or the forestry committee helping to watch over our beloved trees, or the kindness of neighbors checking in on neighbors. I am so very proud to be a part of the community that you all live in. For these reasons, Southport is this awesome place to call home. And please don't forget to take a moment and visit the Southport Garden Club's Candy Cane Garden at Keziah Park. It's guaranteed to make you smile.
Staff.
Next are staff reports that are in your packet, so you can refer to them there. Lastly, board comments, and I'll start with Alderman Allen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just real quick, I want to encourage everybody to consider participating in Shop with the Cop program. I think we can still donate. I know you can still donate up till tomorrow. I can probably do it next week too. You can just drop a check off at the police department at 1029 North House Street. It only takes about 10 seconds to do. I'd encourage you to consider supporting that. I also want to kind of bring up to the board and to the city manager the concept of holding a second monthly meeting. I think especially this month was a really good illustration of the usefulness of that, because we could have had a lot of discussion about particularly closing of the alleyway. I think in a separate meeting, in more of a workshop type session where we're not making a decision, we're just getting information and getting some clarity. I think it's a real good example of how that second meeting would be useful to us. I'd really like to see us. I know staff has an extremely large amount of things on their plate, but I really would like to see that come to fruition as quick as we can. And just wish everybody happy holidays, and hope everybody stays safe and has a good end of the year. Thank you.
Alderman Kelly.
So, Madam Lowe Davis, I would just like to say say that some people talk about preserving North Carolina trees, and then other people actually do it. And they have 7 years about the California Christmas tree, okay? So it's 7 years actually doing it, but thank you. So I'd like to say thank you to Chief Drew and Chief Warren. We were invited as a group to the this year's Fireman's Banquet, and what an awesome experience. I got to talk to some pretty cool people, people that might save our lives someday. And the stories that we heard, if you can get beyond that gut feeling that it's inappropriate, then you can understand just what these guys do. I couldn't do it. And so for that, I am very grateful for all y'all do. It is awesome. These young men, jump in and just go at it. That's impressive. So thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for the gift. It was awesome. When I got home and saw it, I was like, wow, thank you. Bonnie, we don't actually have a vacancy right now for us. We have a very great city manager, if you want to know the truth, and I am so happy that you're here, and I appreciate you, and thank you. And then to all of you, thank you. I walked around town today for about 45 minutes before I was pulled up on somebody's porch. In the 45 minutes, I was on a phone call with somebody else asking questions about Indigo. But that's what it's all about. We're here to talk. We're here to serve you. We're here to answer questions. Just like John said, call me anytime. That's why we're here. So I appreciate you guys. Merry Christmas. And thanks for being Southport.
Alderman.
John, you and I have talked about this before, and it's fully supportive of this second meeting, if it's possible to hold off with the staff, because when I look at the sheet of the past, I'm torn between let's get this stuff done and have another meeting, but if we can figure it out, I'm fully supportive of that. To follow up on Robert's comments about the fire department, well, it was a tremendous event. I was really struck with the whole thing, but the young lady whose name eludes me, the high school student who's going off to college, they got an award for a gazillion hours of EMT work, a high school student. I think she had the most hours, is that right? The most hours of all of our EMTs, or EMTs, she had the most. And she is just full of energy. You see that bouncing up in her chair. So it's an impressive group of people. It's a very impressive event, and I thank you very much.
Alderman Davis.
Well, this has been a nice short meeting. It's only 7:15. We must be doing something wrong. I'd like to end this way. 200 years ago, Clark Clement Moore wrote a poem for his children that started "'Twas the night before Christmas." And so for my remarks tonight, I'd like to go to the last sentence of that poem, which is, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Thank you, Alderman Davis. Alderman Lombardi.
I agree that awards dinner was phenomenal. My second one, and this one was really a good one. And thank you for your pictures. Wonderful. And I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, stay safe, and stay happy.
Thank you, everyone. And do we have a motion to adjourn?